I've been trading for over 7 years, and it took me 3.5 years to find anything that would work for me. And on top of that, I've been interviewing successful traders for the past 5 years, 6, 7, and 8-figure traders. And I want to share with you my entire journey and how I ended up quitting my job 3 times and failing, having to go back to get to where I am today. So that way you can get a better perspective of what to expect if you're pursuing the journey of trading. Now, I understand everyone has a unique perspective, and I myself at the time when I started trading didn't have kids, but now I do. So I can give you the perspective of obviously what I went through, but now with the perspective of having a kid in my life, I can share with you what I think it would normally take someone who has kids. So if you do have kids, don't worry. Now that I have that experience and I have my son in my life, I can share that with you as well. Before I discovered trading, I actually had a very successful career in the sales industry for physician recruitment. In healthcare, I was making well over 6 figures. We were traveling a lot. We were living the life. But over time, I started to not be happy. And I wasn't really happy with going to work every day. I was feeling quite miserable, even though I was making great money. I had the Mercedes I thought was really cool at the time. I was much younger then. I was, I think, 26, 27 years old. And I was really happy that I became the first partner of this firm that I worked so hard to be at. But then I started to feel not so happy. And probably like you, you're probably successful in your career or you're doing quite well, which is why you're probably looking at trading or looking at something to do to invest your money and to grow. Because you might realize, just like I did, that the only way you can really pass certain levels is by owning your own business or by investing or doing something else. And it means not working for somebody, right? Now, when I was looking for something else, I discovered real estate, which I flipped a home, just wholesaling it. I did that and I realized that wasn't for me. There's a whole story about that, but that's not what you're here for. We want to focus on the trading. Once I did that, made some money, I was like, that's not for me. Let me find something else. And then I found all of these ads online, probably what you're seeing online too. Make money fast, the Lamborghini lifestyle, the laptop lifestyle, travel and make money. That appealed to me. And you can make a lot with a little bit. All of that appealed to me. Now, I didn't have a little bit. Luckily, thanks be to God, I had a lot of money I saved up. So that way I could quit my job if I ever found something that I wanted to pursue. Because I knew deep down inside, I probably would do that at some point. And my wife and I had conversations that, one day I might leave. So with that in my mind and the way I'm feeling at my job, I end up looking and seeing all these ads and I fall for one of the ads and I end up buying the course. And from there, in 2017, I decide, you know what? I got this course. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go at it all in. Because when I was trying to do it and work my job, it just wasn't working. I did it for a couple of months and I made the excuse that if I can do this for a year, I can make this work and then, be rich, right? That was in my mind at the time. However, it is the mentality I had. And what really made me decide that is taking losing trades, which makes no sense in hindsight now, right? I'm like, what an idiot. I can't believe I did that. But I remember one of my first, it was a handful of trades. I can't remember if it was I definitely wasn't the first one, but it was probably the 3rd or 5th trade. I didn't know what I was doing. I bought a stock. It happened to be an OTC stock. I had no idea what that even was back then. And I was only trying to lose like $100, but I ended up losing $6,000 and I was livid. I was so mad and I didn't blame myself like I should have, right? But I blamed, oh man, if I didn't have a job and I could concentrate, I could get this. I could make this work. At the same time, I was like, well, thank God I have a job because I can go make this money back. But then over time, I started to realize that, hey, this is something that I really like. And this is something that could be the way for me. And especially seeing all the ads and then hearing success stories, I said, you know what? I could be like them. I can make it in 6 months. I can make it in a year. I can make it in 2 years. Not 2 years. I can make it in 6 months is really what I thought, right? Just like most of you, you might be thinking, I know this is going to take time, but deep down, you're like, I hope I can get it in 6. And that was another issue that I had that really hurt me in my journey. So in 2017, I walked into my boss's office. I was nervous and freaking out and scared because in my mind, my logical side was like, you're an idiot. You're leaving a job that you're making well over 6 figures, that you're very comfortable, that's very easy to make, to pursue something that you're making no money in, that you're losing money in. and you're saying to yourself you'll make it in like a year. You know, you're young. I was young. I was naive, and I said, you know what? At the end of the day, though, I know that if I close my eyes and envision myself on my deathbed, I would regret not doing this. So I went in there, quit my job, and here's a clip of when I did that first time. It's so funny that we have that clip. I didn't know that I would ever use that. I was just really hoping that I would one day. I was like, man, it'd be so cool to look back on this moment and realize that this was the moment that changed my life. And I was thinking that changed my life and made me, oh my God, so much money, and I did so well. But it was not that moment. It was the moment, the first time I quit my job, because yes, I had to go back to a job and quit 3 times. So we'll get to that in the story. So after I quit my job in 2017, that whole year I ended up losing money. So I went from making great money to not making anything, and in fact, losing money. So like I'm paying someone else instead of me getting paid, which was miserable. And it was a really hard moment for me because at that time I had to get rid of the Mercedes. I had to buy a PT Cruiser that was used, and I thought I bought it for $3,000, and then it actually broke down. I had to put another $3,000 just to fix it, so that sucked. And all while I'm losing money every day trading, and the only thing I did well is track all my trades, and I journaled, and that's the only thing I did well. But at the same time, man, there were so many moments where I would cry by myself. I would be in my office, which is not this office, it's another office, which you can see my old episodes, you'll see it. And I was just questioning the decision I made. I was like, why did I leave my job? And on top of that, which I even skipped for a moment, is I didn't even tell my wife that I was going to quit, right? We had conversations in, just in brief conversations about like, yeah, one day it'd be nice, but that's not like a real conversation, right? That's not like saying, hey, I'm going to quit on this day, not preparing her. And that was a huge mistake, right? So if you're thinking about quitting, please prepare your spouse. That's so important. And I was young and I just wasn't thinking. I was just thinking about, I want to do this, right? And so, I didn't tell her, I just did it. And then I explained to her what I did, and that didn't go terribly. She supported me, but at the same time, it was just not the right thing to do, right? And on top of that, I'm over here thinking like, I'm not doing well. I'm losing money every time I place a trade. And what I did well though, is I didn't risk big. I never risked a lot because I knew that I wanted to do this, and I knew it could take some time, but I was hoping it wouldn't take too much time. And every once in a while I'd make some money, but then I'd give it all back after about a week. I'd make money for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then I'd give it all back in 1 or 2 trades, or even in 1 or 2 trades, or in like one day, because I'd revenge trade. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm on a losing streak now. I just lost after winning 12 in a row. That can't be right. And then I just try to force it, and then I'd pile on more cash and just lose a lot, which probably sounds familiar if you're in trading, right? By the end of 2017, I ended up deciding that I was going to go back to work in 2018. And the reason I decided that is because I was getting really down on myself. I was beating myself up. I was dwindling my savings. I saved up for a full year to live on, which was great, but it was dwindling fast. And luckily, that was not the same capital I was using to invest in. I still had my investment capital, but I was not mingling the capital, right? And I think I did that very well too, where some people use the same capital they need to live on to invest. I kept them separate. And that's something that you might want to think about before you even pursue trading. Don't commingle with what you need, because it will take you forever to make it, because you're going to be so emotionally involved. Even though I kept them separate, I still was dealing with a lot of emotions. However, I know that if they weren't separate, it would have been much, much worse, and I probably would have blown up an account. And that's the only good thing. I never blew up an account. And what I mean by that is I never blew up my entire initial investment. So I traded very small. I was risking $100 per trade, which is way too much. It was not a good idea, especially when I first started. And then I say quickly, but after a year, I started to downsize to like $50 and then $25. That took me forever to do though. Again, it took me a whole year. So I was losing $100 per trade, but I also won some, but for the most part, I lost money that year. And the only positive side is the next year when I decided to go back to work, I also decided to start YouTube and start documenting my journey. And I was just going to document like how I'm doing, what I'm doing, and the pursuit of the journey of what I want to become. a successful trader. And when I was thinking that way, I was thinking this would be great to show my children one day, because I knew I wanted children at some point. And I said, it'd be great to show this to them, to show like, hey, like pursue what you want to do. Even if you fail, just go after it, because you don't want to live life with regrets. And at the same time, like, I just wanted to show, like, go after what you dream of, and no matter what. And so my whole goal was to continue to do that forever, even if I made it or not make it. And make it is relative, right? At that time, when I made that goal, I was like, made it to me is $1 million a year in trading. And because I was only focused on one thing, money at the time, which we'll get to that in a minute. Now I don't care about that. I don't focus on that. And that's a huge part of why I became consistently profitable. But again, we'll get to that. So I started the show in 2018 of March, and I went back to work for a competitor in the same field. Luckily, they hired me as a VP, and I was so thankful to God. He had my back this entire time, even though there were moments where I questioned, like, why would you give me this passion? And we'll get to that in a minute too, because that's when I quit the second time. So in 2018, I ended up saving money from March to the end of the year. I ended up saving money again, so that way I could quit my job. And this time I did tell my wife, because I learned from the last time. And I also was mentally more prepared, and I knew how difficult it really was going to be, because obviously it's taken me longer than I thought. I thought it was going to be 6 months, right? But no, I knew how hard it was. And because I was documenting while I was going to work, I would document while I was driving to work, using Instagram Live and stuff like that. And I would have some success, but I was still not consistent. I would have some gains, some losses, some gains, some losses. I would have weeks of doing really well, then weeks where I didn't do too well. And then that would hurt my mindset, and then I had a terrible month. Or I have a really great month, and then the last week of the month, I'd be so high on that great month that I'd give it all back that week. Yes, it was rough. So then January 2019 comes around. I ended up quitting my job for a second time and pursuing trading. And I was gung-ho about it. I was like, I'm going to get it this time. I was really positive about it. I was recording the show just by myself, talking to the camera, giving updates. And you can see all those updates. You should go watch that, because you can see the ups and downs that I go through. Because I end up quitting my job and pursuing trading. And I thought I was going to pursue it for a whole year, and it ended up being 6 months. Because during that time, it got really dark, because I thought I had it. I didn't make money in those 6 months. I broke even pretty much. I didn't lose money, but I still have that light. But the emotions that happened to me those 6 months were affecting my family, affecting my relationship with my wife, because I would, be so down on myself that, when you're beating yourself up every single day, you are not a good person to be around. You might be upset with other people, or you might have a shorter fuse, or whatever it might be. And there were a lot of moments where, no one was at the house. It was just me. And, I'd literally just break down in the middle of the office and like yell at God and be like, why? Like, why would you give me this passion? Like, why would I be so stupid to quit my job for a second time? Like, why would I do that when they gave me my job back, or another competitor right at the same rate? Like, I was so thankful for that, but I was so upset with God at the time that, I blamed him. And again, I'm starting to see a theme in hindsight. Like, the first time I was losing money, I was blaming my job. Then the second time I quit my job, I was blaming God. I was never looking at me, which is something that will change in the later on the story that really changes my journey. So I'm sharing all this struggle so that hopefully you don't deal with this, because it is not easy. Trading is not easy. It is very hard, and it can get easy once you get it, and once you learn it, and once you understand all the nuances, and once you clearly understand you. And that's why I'm sharing all this, because I'm hoping you can clearly start to understand what is important. So in 2019, about 6 months in, I decided to go back to my job, and thankfully, the same people brought me back. And at that same time, I decided to start a podcast called The Healthcare Giants that I did for that job to help me meet other CEOs so I can sell the company and make things happen, right? Because I was still trying to do well at my job when I was there. And then my goal was, when it did well, I started to get tons of interviews for that show. And then I started to meet those CEOs, and then I built relationships so that way I could eventually sell them my service. So after I saw that success with that show, I thought, I could probably pitch this show as my full-time job to the company I work for and let them own it. And they can just pay me to run the show and I can trade. I pitched it. They denied it. They didn't think that was the future. They didn't think it was a good idea. So yeah, I ended up scrapping that. But during that whole time in 2019, I was finding consistency. I found my strategy that worked for me. It was two of them. It was an overextension exhaustion play, which is something I teach in my pop trading system. There's a link below if you'd like to check that out. And then I learned the gap and crap. And that traded way differently back then compared to now. I don't trade it too much anymore. It's rare that I do. But those were the two that made me money. And I was doing really well in just trading those two. And that is what gave me confidence in 2019. I still had my job. I was doing this healthcare giants thing. I was trying to pitch it to them. They kept saying no. And I was seeing success in my trading. And so in November of 2019, I quit my job for a third time. And I did tell my wife again that I was going to do it this time. And that conversation was a little different though. That conversation was rough for me because all I can say is when you have something you really want to do and you're not going to stop until you get it or you'll never stop, then you have this conversation. And I decided to have the conversation of, I know this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I know I want to continue it forever until I get it or not. And so I don't want to hold you back and I don't want to put you through this too because you didn't sign up for that. And because of that, I want you to know it hurts me deep down. Like I don't want to hear this word ever. I don't want to see this. I don't want this to happen. But I need you to know I do love you so much that I don't want to hold you down. And so if you don't feel like this is the right for you, I understand, but I hope you do. And obviously and luckily, she stuck it through and she supported me 100%. And in November 2019 is when I decided to quit. And in December 2019 is when I interviewed my first trader, Kyle Williams. Thanks, my man. I appreciate you very much, brother. And I've interviewed him other times in the show. He's a good friend of mine, a very successful trader. And I've learned a lot from him too, from conversations we've had on the show and off the show. And that's the thing about meeting all these traders. They're all great people. And I get to have conversations on camera and off camera, which is something I learned about from having the Healthcare Giants podcast. Like I learned that, oh, wow, you get to meet these people and build a whole different type of friendship, which is something I love because I love talking to other people and I love having conversations and I love trading and I was doing well at the time. And so I was like, I not only can make money on my own, and it wasn't a lot, but I was consistently profitable and I can talk to other traders about it, but I don't have enough revenue to live off of. So I had a plan and I knew I wanted to find a job, a part-time job. And I got lucky, thanks be to God, through this whole journey that I ended up finding a job running a podcast in the real estate world. And because of my experience in healthcare giants, I was able to really sell them on the idea of hiring me because of all of that experience. And so they hired me. I killed that job. I murdered it for them. And it only took me I'd say maybe 5 hours max a week, maybe 3. I don't know, 3 to 5 hours a week. It wasn't much. And that's because I knew so much about it that I ran it for myself while running my job at my corporate job at the time and trade it, that I figured out that if I just did it for one person and just trade it, I could do this. And little did I know that the show would take up a lot of time too, which it did, but I was able to do it. And in 2020, I'm continuing to trade my overextension exhaustion play, my gap and crap strategy, and I'm working for this real estate business, doing the podcast for them, and then I'm running on my show, and I am loving it. Now, I'm not making a ton of money. I'm just paying my bills pretty much, and don't get me wrong, my wife kept her job. She has a great 6-figure job. She does very well for herself, and she helps out a ton, right? I have a great spouse who's there to help me balance that. That was a huge difference that I had compared to some people who may not have that. So I'm just trying to paint the full picture so that way you can kind of understand everyone starts somewhere else, right? Everyone starts different, right? Some people start trading with no job at all. They're in school. They have no bills, no understanding of what real responsibility is. And that's great. I wish I had that. Then there's some people who have kids, and I have a kid now. And so I can promise you, If I did this when I had a kid, my learning curve would have doubled easily. Easily. Okay? And you would have to have a whole different conversation with your spouse and explain that you're going to need a lot of time to get this done. So that's a whole different thing, right? So just understand, like, if you have a kid right now, double your learning curve so you can have more patience with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. But I think it's worth it, because once you learn this skill, I tell this to everyone, it's a skill that will never go away. It's a skill you can keep forever and you can do for the rest of your life. So even if you have to work for your whole life, you can still grow money on the side. It's great. Like, don't doubt that. Even if you can make an extra $5,000 every year, that can be vacation. If you can make $50,000 a year, that's another salary. If you can make 100, 2, 3, plus 7 figures, that's great too. All I'm saying is I think it's worth pursuing. So as I was saying, in 2020 and in 2021, I was mastering my 2 strategies. I was doing very well, being very disciplined. There were months where I only placed 3 trades, sometimes just 5 trades. And during that time, I was building up my consistency, building up my profitability, and I wasn't making boatloads of money, but I was very happy with how I was consistently profitable. That's all that mattered to me. And that's why I made sure the show was about process over profits, because I wanted everyone to understand it doesn't matter what you make. It matters how you feel and how you focus on the process, because everyone who focuses on the process ends up being more happy and they end up having a lot more success. The people who are focused on the money are only focused on that. And so the further they get away from that, the more they beat themselves up. When they take losses, they beat themselves up. When they make money, they beat themselves up because they don't make enough. I promise you, it's not the road you want to go on. Now, again, the reason I was able to be consistent and only focus on these 2 strategies is because in 2018 and 19, again, remember, I was tracking everything and I found out what made money. And I remembered when I focused on money, because I would write in my journal of how I felt every day. And even though I was doing the same mistakes, I was making things difficult for myself, I was getting emotionally, because I did that very consistently. I'm very consistent about habitual formations. Like, I am someone who has worked out forever. I am someone who, if I have a plan, I'm going to do it. Like, I don't second guess, I just do it. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. And so people who know me for my whole life, they know that's who I am. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And if I don't do it, it's because I tried my butt off and I'm still trying to do it. Like, I'm not stopping. So because that's who I am, all of that journaling helped me. And it showed me that my emotions were getting in my way. And it showed me that when I traded all kinds of nonsense or traded what some guy said on the line or in a chat room, I usually lost. And when I only traded these 2 strategies, I did well. Because I filtered, right? You can filter and show what those 2 strategies did for you. Oh, it was profitable. So when I went on my own in 2020, I became profitable. So when I went back to my job in 2019, I knew that information and I became profitable very quickly because I knew what to focus on and I knew what my dream was and I knew what I wanted to do. And so in 2020 and 2021, I was just honing that skill in and growing the show, doing my trading, and growing this real estate podcast for that other person and helping them manage that. So I was learning more and more about that in the podcast world. And then on top of that, the show became the biggest blessing, like the biggest blessing, because, and that's the thing, like, you have a plan, then God has a plan, right? You never know where life's going to take you. And I didn't know that it would introduce me to so many great people, so many good traders. I didn't know. I just knew I wanted to interview people at some point. I just knew that I wanted to share my journey. And then after I created another show called The Healthcare Giants, that I loved interviewing people, and I thought maybe I can interview people in the trading world. And so I started to do it, and I started to reach out to people and just cold email, DM, and so forth. And I started to grow it. And then I meet tons of mentors. Like, everyone in some way was somewhat of a mentor, whether it was just on the show and I learned from them. But on top of that, everyone else who was watching the show, they were getting mentors because they would see what I was learning and they would learn too, because I was asking questions that I wanted to make sure everyone could learn from. And then I ended up meeting one of my good friends, and who I thought at the time was, I was like, who's this guy messaging me? I met Old Man Scott. God bless you, my man. And before I go deeper into that, I want to let you know too, during this time of 2020 and then 2021, I was swing trading as well. And I was doing well in swing trading, much better than day trading. But I didn't have anyone teach me that. I didn't take any course. I didn't do any lessons. I just kind of taught myself a basic strategy and just tried it. And I was profitable right off the bat. And that's why I never had a lot of confidence to share with anyone, because I was like, I'm just getting lucky. And 2020 was an easy year for a lot of swing traders. So I was like, I'm making money because, everything panicked and you could buy and it's easy. But I made money. And then 2021, I made more money. And I was like, man, this is weird. I make good money swing trading, but I love day trading. I want to make more here. So that's where my focus was. And then that's when I meet old man Scott, who is a trader for over 30 years. And he's a good friend of mine now. And I call him a mentor as well. He's not like a paid mentor or anything like that. He just became a really good friend. And in 2020 and 2021, we would talk on DM on Discord. And during that time, I would share him my trades and he'd be like, man, you only traded like one trade today? Or you didn't trade at all this week? What are you talking about? There was like 18 trades in one day for him. And I would talk to him every day and realize Monday I trade nothing, but he'd trade 10, 12 tickers. Tuesday I trade nothing. Then he'd trade 10 stocks. And then Wednesday, he'd trade 30 and I trade 1. And then Thursday, nothing for me, but 10 for him. Then Friday, nothing for me, and then 5 for him. And that happened every day for months. And eventually, he never solicited me and said, hey, you want me to show you something? Or hey, you want to learn this? Or hey, because he knew, when we had conversations, I would be like, hey man, I love that you do all this, but I'm gonna stay in my lane. I know what works for me. This took me forever to find something to make money. I just want to get better at this and grow it. But then in 2021, I hit a little rough patch. And what I mean by that is I saw less plays and it was rough. I had months that's the year when I was having months where I only placed 3 trades, 4 trades. And I needed the repetition. I thought, how am I going to get repetition and get better? Which I know how to now because I've learned a lot from talking to so many traders and I learned a lot from so many different people. And one idea, just in case you're falling into that trap like I did and you're like, I need to find something else. You don't have to find something else. You should just record yourself trading every time you make a trade and then rewatch that every day. Okay? Rewatch it. That's how you get the repetition. That's how you learn. I instead said, you know what? I need to find a new strategy. And so the guy I was talking to every single day who's been trading for 30 plus years was doing so well and he was so consistent that I was like, you know what? Let me see what he's doing. I started reviewing all his trades and then I started to look at my charts every single day since I was patient and had no trades most days. I would just look at all the trades he took the next day and look at the charts and be like, what do I see here? And I do that every single day. And then I started to generate ideas. And then I started to say, I start to see these throughout the day. And even though I'm not taking them because I was disciplined and only taking my trades, that I started to think about taking them. And then I started to generate questions and be like, hey, here's an idea I had. Do you see this too? And he'd be like, yeah, I see that. I can see that. I can see that. And that's when I decided I want to focus more on mid to large caps because I thought in the long run, since I want to do this forever, and I was still swing trading, mind you, that eventually I just want to trade the larger caps with larger capital and just swing trade and maybe not have to do anything. I was thinking more long term, right? And that's because I didn't think you could make a lot of money with large and mid caps because when I started trading, it was just small caps, right? Because I thought that's how you make big percentage returns. But that's not the case. And he showed me that very quickly where you can risk small and make a whole lot because the risk reward is definitely still there in your favor. You just got to wait for the best opportunities. So I start trying to do these large and mid caps. And I was sending him my trades and my ideas. Before I took trades, I just showed him different ideas for weeks. And he was like, yeah, we're seeing the same thing. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. Now, again, this is still 2021. And at the same time, you're probably thinking, why didn't you just concentrate on that one strategy and just size up? Well, I was trying to do that and I hit a limitation. And that was just in my mental game. I don't come from a wealthy background. I saw my father work his butt off to get us from the low income to medium low to medium. And I got to see that experience and I loved it. And he worked his butt off and I have so much respect for him. And I wanted to take us further, but I also struggled with scarcity mindset instead of abundant mindset. And I was scared that I had to go back to my job because I already went back 3 times, right? I didn't want to go back again and have to quit, right? I didn't want to experience that again. I was tired of that. I wanted to make this count. And so I was scared and that held me back for a while. I could still make money consistently. I could still be profitable, but there were certain ceilings I couldn't overcome at the time. And so that's why I really wanted to learn something else so I can build more strategies and trade the same size, but multiple times I can make more. You understand? Now, during this time, I'm sharing him ideas. Eventually, I say, you know what? We're still in 2021, by the way. I'm like, I'm going to give this a shot. I start trading it. I traded it really, really small. That's the only thing I did well. Risking like $5 here, $5 there to make 15, to make 10. I found success right away, which is a gift and a curse. Number one, it showed me how I could trade that strategy and do really well and consistent. And number two, it gave me so much confidence that I sized up right away. And then I lost a lot of money very quickly. And that really wrecked my confidence. And then I started to notice that the mentality you have for large caps and mid caps has to be different than small caps. And splitting my mentality, depending on the size of the market cap I'm trading, was very hard for me to do because there's so many nuances when it comes to trading. And there's so many nuances in large caps and there's so many nuances in small caps. And I was still still new in my journey, right? I mean, granted, I'm in 3-4 years now, but at that point, that's not a lot of time in terms of experience when it comes to real trading, right? The best traders I know are trading 20, 30, 40 years. That's experience. They have a whole lot more knowledge and I'm trying to get there. So 4 years is really not a lot in the grand scheme of things. So I realized like when I would start to shift and trade a small cap, I would sometimes trade it with a big cap. I would sometimes trade it with a big cap mentality. And then I'd F up the trade, even though it was my setup. And it would make me so upset. And I'd take a great trade and make it a loser. And then I'd go shift to large cap and then I'd trade it like a small cap. And I'd mess it up and I'd be so mad. And that happened up for a while. And then I finally decided, you know what? In 2022, I am going to stop trading small caps for a while and primarily focus on mid and large caps because this is where I want to grow into. And eventually, I will bring them all together and do both. So all of 2022, I focused only on large to mid caps. Every once in a while, I might trade a small cap if it was like so stupid easy that I knew I had to take it, but it was far few in between. And I'm glad I did that because I really gained confidence in the mid and large cap game and I learned how to trade them. And that gave me so much confidence in learning who I was as a trader and seeing that I could trade multiple different types of market caps. And also noticing that you don't need to trade small caps only. Even if you don't have a lot of money, you can make a lot even with a large cap or a mid cap because you can sometimes find great opportunities where you're risking 10 cents to make $2, $3, $4, $6, which is dramatic R&R. And then there's opportunities where you can find 3 to 1 and so forth. But I started to see that. So again, all of 2022, I was focusing there and I started to find consistency and I started to make profits again with just the mid and large caps. And I started to size up back to what I was comfortable with. And I was happy with that. And then in 2023, I reintroduced small caps into my trading because I was like, you know what? Now it's time to bring it back. And I brought it back into my game. And then I started to see a whole different side of my trading because now I had many opportunities available. And by the way, in 2022, what I learned a lot about mid and large caps, at first I was trying to trade everything like his style because I was trying to learn his style and figure it out. And it was really hard for me to do that. You know, it was very difficult. But what I ended up finding out is I found a couple of strategies that I really could hone in on and made sense to me. And I just focused on those, just like I did in small caps. And so I only found like 3 strategies that worked for me. And that was the breakout play, the breakdown play, and the uptrend line crack. That is the only 3 that I played at the time. And then I brought those back to me in 2023 with my 2 small cap plays, the gap and crap, and the overextension exhaustion play. And now I had 5 strategies that I could focus on. And that meant in my head, I could at least have 1 good trade a day. And that is when things started to change. And what I mean by change is everything started to grow much faster. My confidence grew much faster. My profits grew much faster. And because of all those prior years' experiences, I've learned that the only way I can make money is focusing on the process, not focus on trying to make money. And I know that's so weird, but that's how I started to find even more consistency. That's how I was able to come over those humps of mental walls. Like when I got to X number, I was like, oh, this is so hard for me. But once I focused back on the process, I deleted the position tab. I never looked at my P&L until the end of the month. And I did that for months. I wouldn't upload my P&L to the end of the month because I wanted to stay focused. I wouldn't look at how much I made every single day. I would ignore it. And I did that practice for months. And then I started to see growth, much faster growth. And that is why I'm so focused on process over profits. And that's why I call it the POP trading system. And something I teach Again, there's a link below. Now, keep in mind, remember, I've been swing trading this entire time and I've still made consistent money every year. And that kept on itching in the back of my mind. And so I started to analyze in 2022 when I was learning large and mid caps. I was looking at my swing trading and seeing how I was doing so well. And I started to develop a strategy and figure out how actually I did it. And I used those skills to help me hone in on my own small cap trading and in my own large mid cap day trades. And that changed a lot more things in my trading because it made me see a lot of things. I've been consistent for years. And now I have a system behind that and why it was so consistent. I figured out why, and it wasn't just random. And then I made it more consistent in my day trading and in large and mid caps day trading, as well as small caps. And now we're in 2024 and it's been my best year ever. Everything is growing, my day trading, my swing trading, so much so that I opened up my son's account when he was born and I grew that. And all of that is giving me so much more confidence that I was able to develop my pop trading system. But I want you to understand, at the end of the day, you might see me trading live on YouTube and you might see that I'm patient, waiting for plays. If you watch the live trades, we'll have a link below. You'll see me executing trades. You'll see me take wins. You'll see me take losses. And you'll see me wait for trades. You'll see how patient I am. That did not happen overnight. That took 8 years to get here. So don't compare yourself to me. Don't compare yourself to anyone I bring on the show because you don't know how they got here. You don't know their circumstances. You don't know how they started. You don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know if they just found out trading in school. You don't know if they maybe had kids when they started trading. You don't know anything, right? So stop comparing yourself. But just understand, I'm hoping you can watch this, learn the lessons, see how long it took me and why it took me and what I ran into, and hopefully you can implement it for yourself and benefit from it. And again, if you do have kids, please give yourself double the time and give yourself a lot more grace when it comes to learning this, because this is one of the hardest things you will learn, but it can change your life when you do learn it because it's a skill you'll have forever. God bless, take care, and look forward to seeing you